Malcolm Hoenlein is with us. We call it the Weekly Update, Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. Mr. Hoenlein, welcome back to JM and the AM.
Thank you. Good to be with you in these eventful days.
Yeah, lots going on, huh? You know what's interesting? We discussed this a little bit on the air yesterday. I just can't understand how a government that has lost so many of its leaders in dramatic fashion over the last year, and supposedly, according to the United States, their Navy's been obliterated and their Air Force is down to nothing and their Army and all these sites have been attacked, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll talk about what's happened in the last 24 hours. But all that, and yet they're still able to come up with a strategy and to actually carry out blockage of the Straits of Hormuz and to, and to hold the United States where they want them. It's hard for me to comprehend how a government that has suffered so much militarily and strategically, and again, those assassinations over the last year, are able nonetheless to bounce back and do what they've done over the last couple of weeks. Any explanation?
Fundamentally, no. But, you're raising a very valid question, and I don't know how many countries in the world could take them mowing down the top leadership, the second rung of leadership, the third rung of leadership, take on all the hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of bombing raids that took place over the last recent years, including, of course, the wars this year, and sustain it. And remember, it's a big country. It's being done at the price of its people who don't have food, who don't have electricity, who don't have water in a normal fashion. Yet the country continues to move ahead. They could carry out the aggression that they did this week in the Straits. They had to make a cheshbon that this would be worth it. I think it's to increase their leverage. Right. And they saw that slipping away. You have not seen Mushtaba. You've not seen the successor, the people not demanding to prove that he's alive, and that the fact that they could turn millions into the streets for the funeral of the delayed funeral of Khamenei. Some people say they were AI, they were doctor pictures, but clearly there were masses in the streets. But people forget it's a country of more than 90 million people. So if 10% support the government, that's 9 million people that they have to draw on, in addition to the coercion factor, et cetera, to get people into the streets. So you don't judge it just by some of the pictures that come out. It doesn't take a lot to get 500,000 people when you have both the police and the others encouraging, quote, people to come out, and when you have masses who are supportive of the regime for whatever reasons, whether it's extremists and religious fanaticism or what other causes. What is clear, Nachum, and at the root of your question is, why would they make the choice to go ahead and bomb again on and harass the ships in the Straits of Hormuz? Right. So number one, it doesn't take much for them to do that. They have those little fast boats. Some of which have been eliminated, but they still have. America has targeted them in some of the attacks. But the fact is, they have large numbers of them. They can do enough. You don't need an aircraft carrier. You need just those to threaten the ships and to fire missiles from on shore, which is why, if you've seen the pattern of attacks during the last weeks, they've been hitting sites near Karg Island, near the water on the Iranian side, and that they fired towards the Oman side, which is where the ships are going to bypass Iran. So they made a decision that they can increase their leverage. This is my speculation, by and get a better deal. And this was clear to the negotiators, who came back to the president and said they're not really interested in making a deal. And the IRGC, which is taking the lead on all of this now, is of course more extreme and wants to maximize the leverage. They want to have complete control because they also want the income and whatever blackmail you can get from letting ships through and not letting through, or charging them, quote, a fee to transverse the straits. These are all the issues.
The problem is there's no deal that'll let both sides save face. There's no deal.
Well, there was a deal that let both sides save face. Let's say I don't know why America has to save face, but nor why it's not bombing, but the Iranians, declared victory. They said, "Listen, you can bomb us all you want. We retain the ability to make nuclear weapons. We retain the ability to make ballistic missiles. Maybe we can't access right now all of the missiles that we had, but they have the knowledge and they have the facilities. They can rely on Russia and China to help them to some degree, but to very minimal degree. I think we can say that their involvement here has not been. But they have the oil. They have the promise of the income was there. And they sacrifice it.
Right.
So everything, it's a short-term view of things, very narrow, and it's likely people who are inexperienced. And that's where you see the price that they paid for the loss of the leadership, that you have people who don't know really what they're doing, who go into the negotiations, promise certain things, and sign the document and then renege on it because they say, well, it's not what we intended the document to say.
Yeah, I don't know if the prior regime would have done that any differently, but I hear you. And look, I mean, we trust you speak to people in Iran more than anybody else who's tuned in right now. And we trust your anecdotal evidence that there are so many people that are against the government, would love a revolution, would love a regime change, etc. But let's say the 10 million, as you pointed out, the 10%, the 9 million, 10 million are in fact with the government. And obviously there's a 9 or 10 million, 10% that's against the government. That's, I think anybody would conclude. I think every country has that, no matter what the situation is. What's your confidence level about that middle 70 million? Is it possible at this time, and I'm drifting into this area of thinking, is it possible at this time that the majority of that 70 million really are with the current government and are not ready to accelerate regime change, and that number of revolutionaries or those who really want a major change in Iran is much smaller than we think?
I think the evidence, and it's limited because you don't have true polling. We have done some. I mean, people have done it, and we have the results. And we know that the vast majority of the people want this government to end. But number one, I don't think they have confidence in the West as much as they did, and especially after January, when tens of thousands of people, perhaps 50,000, were killed. And when 50,000 people are killed, you use multiple figures to know how big the opposition really was. And so they don't have, and the promise that, we have your back, we will be there for you. The West did nothing for them and continues to do nothing for them, that they lose confidence in the outside world's intervention. And they're saying, yes, and then we're left to face the Basij and the IRGC, et cetera, and look at their families, look at the danger that they feel. So number one, the vast majority of people opposed the government. I have seen studies that say 70, 80, 90% are against it. Again, we don't have necessarily reliable figures always, but at least it's a strong indicator of where the people are at. And remember, it's not just on ideological grounds. It's because their currency is worthless. Their unemployment is raging. Inflation is 200% at least, and it's probably much more than that. You take all the factors that impact their daily lives, including the fact that you don't have water in cities like Tehran and for large times and electricity shutoffs. So quality of life and the day-to-day life is very difficult, but they're afraid. They're intimidated. They saw that the Basij can go in the streets, openly shoot and murder in front of the world, tens of thousands of people, and there's no response. So if you're somebody with a family there and you're looking at the situation, you're not going to be so public anymore. You're not going to respond to the calls, demonstrate, and et cetera, because you know the reality. But the Kurds, all the stories about the Kurds, they remain, and as do the Ahwaz, as do the Azeri populations. The half of the country that is made up of ethnic groups, other than the Farsi, other than them, they are almost uniformly against the regime. But they're kept down, and the system itself today is one of repression. That's what's left. You can, if you have a couple 100,000 besieged who are given rifles, they can go into the streets anytime, and they still arrest people all the time. Protesters, women are being arrested, not wearing the burqa. These things go on, but nobody's reporting it, and nobody's telling about the intimidation that goes on day to day.
Yeah, I hear that. The President of the United States this week outright said the ceasefire is over. Now, I don't know if there ever was really a ceasefire in effect, but tell me about the significance now that he's declared it over. I mean, there has to be at this point, and I know they've already demonstrated it. The United States took some military action this week, but I guess there's no other choice now but to actually accelerate the war effort against Iran.
So they have done that. We have seen the acceleration, the 80 attacks a night, and the fact that we're targeting military sites. I think CENTCOM, the Central Command, all along has been advocating for another round of attacks, saying that they need to finish the job. They asked, if you remember, for 2 more weeks when the ceasefire came, because they knew the things that they needed to do. They hit 90 military targets in a night, including air defense systems, some of the coastal surveillance assets, which is how they monitor the shipping, missile and drone storage sites, naval capacities, some of the logistics infrastructure near the Iranian coast. So what it tells you is several things, one of which is how extensive the investment had been in all of these military facilities and all of this capacity that Iran, which doesn't have an air force, but put all this money into these sites, and the IRGC, the CENTCOM attacks, meaning the American attacks, came after the Revolutionary Guard said that they carried out joint missile and drone attacks against U.S. military sites in Bahrain and Kuwait and other sites. They claim that they hit, 50 military sites related to the U.S. military presence in the region. And even the head of NATO said that the new attacks were absolutely necessary. He's been very courageous, Secretary General Mark Rutte, all along. He said when you have a ceasefire and Iran is violating it, it is totally crucial the U.S. respond. So there still remain so many military targets to hit. In addition to the fact that a lot of the underground facilities, they're not accessible immediately, but ultimately would be, and maybe they are going after those additional sites as well. So, and one other thing about the people are tired. They're exhausted from all of this. So when, the fight is being taken out of them. So domestically, they're repressing them. And then they suffer these attacks, and yet they can claim that they're winning, that they're in control when they have no control in the air, and that the United States can challenge them in the straits, because you need a long-term solution. Even if the price of oil goes up a little bit, or even more than that, a little bit now, in the long run, it will mean that will be much more stable situation, and the shipping will be able to go through. And until alternative routes are created, it's essential.
It's interesting that there's a report that the Israelis actually are the ones who informed the U.S. that Iran wants to assassinate President Trump. The reality, though, is I don't know if any other American president I don't know if you agree with this or not. I don't know if any American president from either party would have dealt with this differently. Do you think so?
Well, I'm not sure the Democrats, when they were in control, would have gone as far or would have resumed the fighting now. People want it out when you're facing a midterm election. And I think the commitment remains to the fact that you have ongoing negotiations. I don't always agree with the positions, but the fact that they remain committed to the process. I think there are disturbing signs about, that we should have been executed the rest of the at the time when we called the ceasefire. But there are a lot of factors that go into a decision like that which are public and a lot which are not public, for people to be able to make a judgment from the outside about what needs to be done. the negotiators clearly found that they're lying to them all the time. The taqiyya philosophy or theology, which allows you to lie to achieve certain ends. We see it demonstrated all the time, and yet they continue to do it. And it's no different with Erdogan. And I think it's unfortunate that we talk about selling what we are going to sell to Iran, to Turkey, which is a potential Iran.
Well, Trump said he hasn't decided yet, right?
Right. It's not a final decision, although he indicated different things at different times about
shockingly enough.
Yeah, but obviously it's under discussion. Obviously, it's gone a stage further during this last visit and the embrace of Erdogan, who is still behind a lot of the stuff that's going on in Syria, and together with Qatar, working to reestablish a Muslim Brotherhood front that would include Syria, Egypt, Libya, others. They want to have a counterpart, a Sunni front like the Iranian front, Shiite front that was created with the 7 countries and 7 fronts against Israel. That he calls that they're very disappointed with Shara not doing enough to confront the presence of Israel and the security zones that they created. And I think there are American officials or officials who are complicit in some of these activities, which is likely will come out in the end. But right now we're facing the consequences of it, and people like the Kurds, the Druze, the others, the Christians, could easily be paying the price.
American officials, meaning White House officials or Pentagon officials, like
people associated with the administration.
Wow.
And by the way, what's interesting, what you said about the fact that Israel notified them, obviously is a reflection of the fact that they're continuing to do amazing work. The security services continue to do what they do all the time. But you notice how the press doesn't talk about the fact that there were the sentencing of people in Europe for assassination attempts and the desire to kill people, attempting to kill people because they were critics of the government. A journalist for Iran National, which is not a government run station. It's opposition station. And the fact that the 2 Romanians, for instance, in England, were jailed for stabbing a journalist. This journalist on behalf of Iran. But where's the condemnations? Where's the reaction to this?
Nobody cares.
And we don't know how many more of these kind of attacks there are going on. And second, when you look at what's happening, for instance, in the Syrian school system, teaching jihadist and anti-Israel indoctrination in major parts of the school systems, and all the other factors that we could go on forever about in this regard, people not getting a total picture and the reality. And then, of course, you have all the escapism and all the blame on Israel for everything from Charlie Kirk to being responsible for the Iranian thing. No planes from Israel took part in the raids this week. It was an American CENTCOM operation. So nobody's pulling the strings to make these things happen. And the conspiracy theories and notwithstanding, reality is that America and Israel have the same objectives.
I have a question about that. It's America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program. Heard a listener-sponsored digital radio around the world, the web at NachumSegal.com and the Nachum Segal Network, and, of course, the beloved NSN app. Malcolm Hoenlein with us, weekly update time. And I think what you just said, in a way, was proven by the enemy. And this may sound really crazy, but Iranians this week in response, they attacked bases in Bahrain, right? That was one. And where was the other one? Not the UAE.
Kuwait, Bahrain.
And Kuwait, right, Kuwait. They're not even, and believe me, friends and relatives in Israel were afraid that they're going to have to head into shelters overnight the last couple of nights. Thank God they did not have to. And I think, is that an acknowledgement by the enemy that this is really Iran versus the U.S. right now and Israel's out of it?
So, first of all, there were missiles fired at Jordan, which we believe were probably aiming at Israel. Although because America has military presence in Jordan, that could have been the target. There's clearly targeting countries with American bases, American resources, and they claimed that they hit 50 American facilities, not just in the two countries, but in others as well, during the past week, let alone during the weeks before. So I know that 6 of the missiles to Jordan were shot down, and then 2 additional ones, landed. None of them did damage, and whether they were really aiming at Israel. Now, number one, it could say that their ability to fire long-range ballistic missiles is limited, and that, in fact, the bombing took out most of the missiles that they had remaining after the attacks on Israel, and that they're not able to replace them, so that they don't have the long-range missiles to open up the front on Israel. The second thing is that they're trying to put the pressure on American public opinion. They know that there's a midterm election coming also. So if you have body bags and damage like they portray of American facilities and American service people, that will build up domestic pressure on the U.S. So it's tactical decisions, I think, on their part. But the missile question is one that I've also thought about, and I hope the answer is that they just don't have a lot, and they're saving them for an attack on Israel.
Right, because if they do start a rocket attack, a missile attack on Israel, it's got to be significant. They can't, and
it means that Israel will respond and will join the U.S.
That's why I'm saying that, as you just said, five missiles ain't going to be enough. Israel's not going to tolerate it. If they're going to respond properly, quote unquote, from their point of view, they're going to have to start with hundreds of missiles, and maybe the supply is running short. Who knows? All right, the AP poll. Let me read a couple of these things and get your reaction. So this is over 1,000 Jewish adults nationwide. 44% view Mamdani very or somewhat favorably compared to 32% for Netanyahu. This was the headline, that U.S. Jews view Mamdani more favorably than Netanyahu. And then some of the typical stuff on Palestinian statehood, basically, results that you'd expect, arming or not arming Hamas, whether Israel committed genocide. I'm glad to see that 50% said no. I consider that a major victory in the polls. And of course, complete disapproval, over 70% for Donald Trump for the president of the United States. So Mamdani versus Netanyahu, and maybe you could, at the same time that you're addressing this poll, maybe at the same time you could give us your review, your reaction to Rahm Emanuel's presentation in Tel Aviv this week.
Okay, so first of all, about the poll. Polls can be made to say whatever you want it to say. They say a national survey of 1,000 Jews out of the 6 million. And if they went to L.A. and they went to the Upper West Side for the 1,000 people, that's why you would get the results. I do not believe that that's a valid reflection of where the American Jewish community is. I've not seen any evidence from another source that would justify it. Is there, growing resentment? Is there a left-wing tilt against Israel in places? Yes. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We saw it in some of the recent elections, but it does not reflect that kind of a lopsided result. So I think we need to have some real testing and to see, is Netanyahu popular today in America as he once was? No. But if you're targeted every single day by every media, virtually every media, and by, with a few exceptions, obviously, and by the the political left and center left constantly, and everybody's saying, we're not against Israel, we're against Netanyahu. It's not, you've got to be against Netanyahu. Netanyahu's the evil force, et cetera, et cetera. And you do that day in, day out, year after year, it's bound to have an impact. So people, can say, they don't want to say they're against Israel, so they say they're against Netanyahu.
Right.
And so that's one. Two, about Rahm Emanuel is a reflection of the same thing.
Yeah,
the guy wants to run for president. Right. He's trying to position himself. He's nowhere in the polls. And so he goes and he makes all of these announcements before the speech. He builds it up. And what is it that he says? I'm going to attack Netanyahu. I'm going to say that he's responsible. And so, you build up, because unfortunately the press in Israel, a lot of it is very anti-Netanyahu, very leftist, and will snap at the opportunity to pick up a, quote, presidential candidate. How many Americans do you think, if you interviewed them, would say that they see Rahm Emanuel as a presidential candidate? 5 people, 10 people? I mean, it's not true. He's being muted now because they want to build up what he said. And so he knows that to get the notice and to be able to distinguish himself in the Democratic pack by saying, I'm of Israeli descent, and I'm above reproach, and I'm attacking him so that he gains, and he tries to mute the impact potentially of his Israeli background for the presidential race, because he knows in the Democratic Party it's not popular. So what's better than go to Israel, make announcements one after another what you're going to do to attack Netanyahu, know that you're going to get a lot of press. I mean, there are a lot of important people who go to Israel. Nobody gets the kind of press he got for this attack.
And I can imagine the kind of Israeli press he got.
Of course, it's very positive but it's because of the scandalous nature of it, what he says and what he does.
No, that I get.
But I haven't heard him out there so vociferously, defending Israel after October 7th and during the wars.
Yeah, I mean, this was very Schumer-like. He's going to do what he needs to do in order to prove to his party that he's as anti-Netanyahu as possible, or anti-Netanyahu's policies. Yet another reason where I'd be so curious to see what would happen if someone else was prime minister. But we don't have to go down that road. Although yesterday we did discuss how once Shemini Atzeres ends, it's going to be a rough 3-4 weeks in Israel till they get to Election Day. It is going to be...
Yeah, and the lead up to that, I agree with you. I'm very worried about a very divisive election. As you know, now, what's his name? Yuli Edelstein and the former Minister of Justice have created a new party. There are others that will create a new party. You see that the distribution of votes right now doesnent give anybody, the opposition or the government, a block that is sufficient to get over the 60 votes. It depends on where the religious parties and others and who's willing to count in the Arab parties. And the numbers are going to shift dramatically, and as you said, it's going to be very hotly contested. And then there's the flavor of the day. Now Eisenkot was banned for a while. Now it's Eisenkot, and we'll see how long that lasts and how he really can do when tested in the campaign, and can come up with new policies, new direction. He's never run anything before. I mean, he ran the army, but he doesn't run in political sense. I mean, so it's a new challenge for him. He's very smart, they say, and capable. We'll see. It'll be tested, but we've seen these kind of flashes before. It's true Netanyahu has lost some of the support within Likud and outside, but, we never know. As they say, Israelis tell the truth to pollsters and then lie at the polls.
It's amazing how he would not be, with all the times he was invited, including recently. I don't remember exactly what month, but it's not that long ago. He was invited to Congress to give a speech. Nobody would do that now. I don't think anybody, Republican or Democrat, would invite him now.
He's going to come likely. They had a conversation last night, the president and Netanyahu, about the Iranian situation. I think the president appreciated a warning about the threat to his life. I mean, that's the kind of thing he would react to. And the fact that, he said it publicly without acknowledging Israel, but just saying about the threats against him, which should be enough to get anybody angry and understand the nature of the threat, that nobody's beyond the Iranians' reach if they can, and they can get to them. So I think Netanyahu will come here, maybe even before the end of July. And then, because in August people go on vacation, and you don't want to get it too close then to the primaries in Israel and to the Chagim. So
the last second half of July,
window of opportunity.
He'll be in Washington the second half of July. Wow,
I think so. And then, but remember, he's also coming in September for the UN General Assembly. So 2 visits, in too close proximity, even in Israel, doesn't sell well. when people want him around. And he's only going to come. He wants to come for one day to the UN. And unfortunately, right now he's scheduled, I think, on a Friday. So he would have to spend too many days here, and because it's also Sukkot. So I think he wants to do it closer to the beginning, which is on Yom Kippur or the day after Yom Kippur.
Wow. Yom Kippur's on a Monday. Yes, right. I guess.
So I think they start that Monday. I think the UN starts.
Oh, so you were saying that Friday Erev Sukkot, it looked like, was his first.
That was the date. That was what the first round was.
Right. Oh boy, I'll tell you.
And during an election season, you can't be away that long.
Right. I just wonder if, in fact, all this continues with military action against Iran by the U.S. on a nightly basis, semi-nightly basis, whatever it is. I wonder what the reaction, how much stronger it'll be against him if he walks into this country. Like, I just wonder if because so many blame him and blame Israel, obviously, for any military action that the United States is involved with in that region, especially with Iran. If he's here, I wonder if that's just going to really stoke the fire, really,
Well, they blame Israel for everything anyway, so it doesn't matter whether anything's actually going on because it's creating a mythology. I have to tell you something funny that I spoke this week at the Christians United for Israel conference, which is, as I tell everybody, the most amazing of the year. That
you were at the Monday Night Bibi event when he called in.
I was there from Sunday. We had an event. The hundreds of Jews who came this year, and many of them are religious Jews, and they will tell you what an amazing experience. You walk away from there a better Jew and more committed because you see people who are so totally devoted and express it in such magnetic ways. I'm telling you, when I go up there and speak every year, I swear I'm not going to get excited, but it pulls you. It's like a magnet. They are amazing how intense, and they had a bigger turnout this year than they've had for several years. It's just amazing, and the array of speakers was so impressive. And to see the level of support, the people who are with Israel, non-Jews, one after another, who got up there to speak, and of course some Jews. But I met with a group of the young people who came after my speech, and they had all sorts of questions they wanted to ask. And one of them, and I told them that I don't mention Mamdani's name. Oh, I just said it. But I don't say M's name. That's what I said in my speech. And because he wants that. He wants us to attack him. He wants us to continue to make him the foil and raise his profile, etc. So one of these students came over to me and he said, "You know what? You ought to call him the Grand Mufti of New York."
Ooh.
I said, "That's amazing." So everybody is free to take it from now on.
Wow.
We refer to him as the Grand Mufti.
That is a good one. And I assume you saw the review of his 4th of July speech?
I did.
And
very sad.
And the bombs made it into the speech, Malcolm.
Yes. And his wife's involvement in this horrible conference. I mean, there's no limit to it, and they add insult to insult, and the things that he's willing to acknowledge and not willing to acknowledge, and yet you got to admit he's got an amazing PR operation. That every little decision that he can gets him in front of the people and saying, "Oh, I'm working on your things," as if he's doing something constructive, and how much money is being invested in infrastructure, community organizing infrastructure that they will translate to their political benefit, and they always coded in saying it's community engagement and things like that. When you find out how much money is being spent on it at a time when the city doesn't have money and claim to have balanced the budget, when in fact it's a bailout from the state, and they get away with so much that it's just incredible.
Yeah, no question about it. Boy, what a difference a year makes, huh? I'm just thinking. I'm just thinking back to my Netanyahu point, how he wouldn't be invited to Congress now. Like he was the most popular guy for God knows how long. I mean, this was a love affair that went on for a very long time.
And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens if Netanyahu comes to New York, as he said he is, for the UN to give the speech at the UN General Assembly, and the mayors promised that he will arrest him if he comes to New York.
Right.
And when asked about it, when he was pressed on about it, and I saw when I was in Israel some of the reports saying that he said it's, creating a dilemma and it's going to be very problematic, and, essentially saying he wished he didn't come, which I'm sure he wishes he didn't come, that we'll see. This could set up a very interesting confrontation. I do not believe the NYPD is about to arrest Netanyahu. I don't believe the people in New York want to see him arrested.
Yeah, but he's doubling down. He keeps mentioning how there's an international warrant for his arrest. The ICC.
Yeah,
I know. I'm saying,
and they're going to honor it.
But the fact that he's bringing it up, the fact that that's what he keeps hammering home, worries me.
Well, because it justifies what he's doing. It's the cover that he said, well, I'm not against it. I'm just enforcing international law by doing it. But I think that the federal government wouldn't allow it to happen. And I think it's a federal decision. When people are invited to the UN, remember all the Iranian outlaws that came and all of the terrorists who came to speak because they were covered, but they weren't allowed to go beyond 25 miles of the UN.
Right.
But they were allowed to come with a few exceptions. Even Arafat was allowed to come.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's really in his decision, but he will grandstand it again to promote his national profile and his stand as the leader of the anti-Israel forces. And as he sees that, it gets greater leverage in the Democratic Party, and I'm sure maybe he'll hire Graham Plattner to be an assistant or something as a PR guy.
I hear he's looking for a job.
And chief oyster man in the thing, and there are interesting revelations that are coming out about Plattner's family and stuff that even ties to Israel. So it's too strange. This world is so weird.
Positive ties to Israel?
Pardon me?
Positive ties to Israel?
No, a relative who...
simply somebody who's related to him from Israel. Yeah, I hear he's in need of a job now, so maybe he will go work for Mamdani. Who knows?
They say that the family has money, so it's okay. He'll be all right.
But it is... you just said it. You just said it. How crazy it is. How crazy it is. That may be the theme of this whole discussion. How different things are and how things change and how the populace has such a different attitude toward all these things. Now, we remember a time when the average American citizen had a certain point of view, and now you can't depend on that anymore.
You can't, and despite the fact that you have such an abundance of information, and we warned about this but it's not responsible information. You can create anything that the immediate response to any crisis is Israel did it, when it has no relationship to Israel, no involvement of Israel, and yet young people buy into the lies, the distortions, and blame Israel becomes then the fallback position on every issue.
Yeah, that's true.
It's just astonishing that people forget it's a country of 10 million, and they really believe that it's manipulating. And the fact that AIPAC has become the target in all of these elections, when it's simply Americans, not foreign money, it's American money, Americans giving expression to their political views, the Muslim money that is coming in from all sorts of countries, Qatar and Iran and others, Saudi Arabia, all of them manipulating our campuses, manipulating our political processes and our economy. That nobody even talks about. When there are negative associations, there's no negative association with what Americans who are expressing their views in a political election. There's no takeover. There's no goal here, whereas the Islamists continue to advocate to take over America.
So true. Thank you. Have a wonderful Shabbos. We'll speak, please, God, next week.
God willing, have a good Shabbos.
Malcolm Hoenlein, everybody. Weekly updates, 7:40 a.m. Eastern Time each Friday here at JM in the AM.